Hello everyone and welcome back to the 17th episode of this Chris Talks Football podcast, and today we're going to go through all of the matches, all of the big footballing stories that have happened across the past week, and that includes the draw for the Champions League last 16 after we had the group stage 1 week ago, and also the draw for the Europa League. We'll see who the Scottish and other English clubs got in that draw, and we'll also be reacted to match day number 17 of the Premier League season, full of controversy, full of shocking results really, but we'll have all analysed at this video, so hopefully you guys do enjoy. So then let us start with the Champions League last 16 draw now. All of the English sides that were in the Champions League have gone through. Of course, Chelsea really with probably one of the most favourable ties. They faced Bayern Munich in February in the round of 16 in the Champions League, and of course we know that I think in January the transfer ban is lifted on Chelsea, but whether they will buy players next month we'll wait to see. They've been linked with Wilfried Zaha quite lately, I think, in the gossip, but I don't personally think they'll sign anyone. I think they'll stick with the squad that they have. I think Frank Lampard does have faith in the squad, and you know, they're doing alright. They're still pretty high up in the table. They're 3 points ahead of Spurs, and the reason they're 3 points ahead of Spurs is because they lost to Bournemouth in this weekend's match day, and well, basically it was a repeat performance, you could say, of the game against West Ham, because now Chelsea are actually in their last three home games, they've lost their last two. So maybe the signs are starting to happen. But I did say this after Chelsea lost to Everton. This is their second consecutive defeat. I did say that Frank Lampard will be fine, and I will say the same thing. I do think he'll be fine. He is in the top four, which is an absolutely monumental achievement in this part of the season, of course, because of the amount of playing time that some of the people do get. But Bayern Munich, that's going to be quite a tricky tie, because of course Bayern Munich, I believe, are leading the Bundesliga, or they're right up there as I get confirmation. But yeah, Bayern Munich are like right up there with the Bundesliga. They smashed Werder Bremen this weekend 6-1. But yeah, Chelsea really are obviously, probably in my opinion, not going to sign anyone for the in the January transfer window. But of course they have been linked with the likes of Timo Werner and Lyon striker Moussa Dembele. They're on their shortlist. So, you know, even though they have, you know, said that they could be, you know, in the running to sign some players, but not a lot, you know, it still depends on whether they have the right squad. In my opinion, they do. They have obviously a very young and talented squad, the likes of Tomori and Mason Mount and Tammy Abraham. They've all got chances this season, and they have pretty much taken them. I think that when you look at the start of the season, I think you would have probably thought that they wouldn't have gone too far. But yeah, as I said, in fact, Bayern Munich are fifth in the Bundesliga table right now. They're 6 points behind the current leaders, Red Bull Leipzig, who are having a season from heaven, really. Timo Werner scored a lot of goals there. But yeah, Bayern Munich do have a good goal difference, but I think that this could be a tough tie for Chelsea. I think they're both in similar positions. Of course, Bayern Munich have an interim manager. I don't know his name, but they have an interim manager for the rest of the season after, obviously, Niko Kovac was sacked. But Bayern Munich, of course, were top spot after beating Tottenham by 3-1. And I think that's going to be a tricky tie, especially away for Chelsea. But I think their home form in the Champions League, okay, yes, they might have lost to Valencia, but you know, I still think there's a good side in them. And even though, you know, they had tough opposition, then home form isn't really the greatest in the Champions League. Obviously, the 4-4 draw with Ajax, in which they conceded quite a few goals, and of course the loss to Valencia. So, you know, Chelsea could be in the running to lose both those games in February when the round of 16 does start. But yeah, this is going to be interesting times, because if Frank Lampard can pick the right team and motivate them, I think that they could go through. But it's going to be very tight. Bayern Munich are doing pretty well. Coutinho, of course, has arrived on loan from Barcelona. He is starting to, measure up to his performances. I think he scored a brace this weekend against Werder Bremen. But, I think we need to see the best of him, especially in the Champions League, because of, the fact that he cost Barcelona more than 100 million. So I think, it's going to be quite tough for Chelsea, but whether they can deal with it, we'll obviously see, because obviously we're talking about a game that's going to happen in February. But also another Bundesliga team that are playing another English side. As I said, Red Bull Leipzig, Timo Werner is on fire right now this season. They are facing Tottenham in the Champions League last 16, and that could be pretty interesting, because obviously Tottenham under Jose Mourinho have really bounced back. Of course, they beat Wolves away from home by 2-1. Lucas Moura scoring the pick of the bunch, probably, in my opinion, one of the goals of the weekend. In fact, he dummied, I think, past a couple of defenders and then slotted it right into the roof of the net. But I think in the Champions League, of course, they did lose to Bayern Munich. I think the positive out of that for Jose Mourinho is his side were in large parts of the game, and Ryan Sessegnon making his debut. Of course, they signed him while he was injured, I believe, from Fulham. Obviously, Sessegnon has not turned 20 yet. He has another decade and a half left. But, I think that at home, they're a force. I mean, let's just forget about the 7-2 defeats at Bayern Munich, but at home, they're really good in the Champions League, and I think they could cause Red Bull Leipzig under a lot of pressure. But I think that for them to contain the likes of Timo Werner and Yusuf Poulsen and Matthias Cunha and Kevin Campbell, they are going to really have to shape up their defence, because Red Bull Leipzig have the best goal difference in the Bundesliga. They are really good. They've got one of the best goalkeepers in Peter Gulaschi, I think that's how you pronounce it. But, I think Spurs do need a defender, 100%. I think that, despite Alderweireld and Vertonghen doing well, they are getting on a bit. They're both over 30 years old. So I think a young defender could be, the answer to Spurs' problems. Maybe look at the likes of, Soyuncu, or I didn't even know who they're linked with, to be fair. But, they're really going to have to contain their strike force, because it is just an absolute joke. I mean, Timo Werner scored 16 goals and assisted 5 further. And it's, we're obviously going to have to look at other players like Marcel Sabitzer, a creative attacking midfielder for Leipzig from Austria, and he's doing pretty well as well. He was linked with Chelsea last summer in the window, before obviously they had their transfer ban. But it's going to be quite tough for Tottenham, but I think they'll bounce back. They'll go through, and I think they'll be in the quarter-final. But of course, they beat Wolves this weekend in the Premier League, which means that Tottenham are starting to catch up with Chelsea. They're only 3 points behind. They have 2 less victories than Chelsea, but they have 1 less defeat than Chelsea, which is very good. But I think Jose Mourinho has adapted well. Of course, I believe both of his defeats were against Manchester United and Bayern Munich, and they are high-class opposition, I think. But Mourinho, of course, ever since he's come in, the job at West Ham, he's won 4 of his 5 Premier League games, which is very, very good for Spurs boss. And he's turned the situation around. I think Tottenham now, I said that they would finish 3rd. I mean, they're only 9 points behind Manchester City, who we'll touch on after I talk about Spurs. But, we're pretty much halfway through the season. I think once this month is over, we definitely will be halfway through the season. But I really do think that Jose Mourinho is doing well. I think he's getting them back to where they should be. I think, you could say maybe people were a little bit hesitant to rule them out of the top 4. I thought that because of the season that they had last season, it would be a very good season for Spurs, because of the success they were having. But, top 4 does seem like they were going to actually, go at it. But, obviously, Jose Mourinho has done well, and I think they can beat Leipzig in the Champions League. Of course, they were drawn against them, and they're doing well. I think the fact that they did beat Wolves, of course, that ends Wolves' little unbeaten run that they went on. They're 8th now in the league. They're obviously 2 points behind Spurs. It's very tight between 5th and 8th, as we'll touch on later on. But yeah, it's going to be quite tough. But probably the standout tie in the whole draw is Real Madrid against Manchester City, a repeat of the semi-final in the 2015-16 competition where they faced each other, and Real Madrid, I believe, won their home game and drew the away game. I'm not too sure, but they have played each other in the Champions League before, and it's a different team, of course. That was Sterling's first season in 15-16. Can you believe that? But obviously Sterling is now one of the best players in the Premier League and in world football. But yeah, Manchester City put on an absolute masterclass, especially Kevin De Bruyne, who produced one of the performances individually of the whole calendar year 2019. I think that really he's been an absolute presence in that midfield in that game. I think that he was really good. Of course, he set up a goal and scored as well. So it's good times for Manchester City. And of course, they do have Real Madrid. Real Madrid, of course, despite losing Ronaldo, despite, of course, all of the rumours surrounding Gareth Bale, despite the unknown players that they've brought in over the last couple of seasons, they are actually keeping up with Barcelona. And you have to say, it's a really good job what Zidane has done since his comeback. Of course, he's had other fall downs, of course, in the Champions League, but he's done pretty well, I think, for how much he's had, because I really do think that when Scolari left, they were probably at their lowest point, in my opinion. Real Madrid, beaten by Ajax at home, humiliated in fact, but that really has, put a little bit of gloss back on, and now they really are doing well. But of course, it doesn't really matter. It's all about how the team performs on the night. And can Real Madrid do it? They're level on points with Barcelona and have only lost one league game this season. That's pretty good. That's pretty good for Real Madrid. Now, Real Madrid and Barcelona have played 2 less games in La Liga than the rest. Only 1 less game in La Liga than the rest. But of course, El Clasico is coming up pretty soon, so obviously we'll see who goes on top out of that one. But yeah, in La Liga, Real Madrid are pretty well. They rescued a point this weekend. Karim Benzema scoring an equaliser to rescue a point, really, away from home against Valencia, who were knocked out of the Champions League. They were in Chelsea's group, but yeah, they're unbeaten in 11 games now, Real Madrid. And yeah, it was pretty, I think it's pretty controversial, the fact that obviously they had their man sent off, but let's not talk about that one. They meet in El Clasico on Wednesday. Obviously, that'll be a game that a lot of people will be talking about, but Manchester City, I think, now are probably going to be back on to try and catch up to Leicester, who are second place. We'll touch on Leicester in a bit. But about Manchester City's opponents on that day, Arsenal, they are really in a spot to bother, because after that 3-0 defeat, Freddie Ljungberg has now only won one of his 4 interim games rather, in the Premier League, which is not very good, I think. They lost to Brighton, drew at Norwich. Obviously, Arsenal won at West Ham, but they only showed up for about half an hour, 35 minutes. So it hasn't really been very good for Arsenal. And the big news surrounding Arsenal is that Mikel Arteta, who's been working at Manchester City as a sort of protege to Pep Guardiola, encompassing his coaching style for the last 2 years, I think, he has been linked with the job. And in fact, if obviously Arteta and Ancelotti are the 2 main key, but they target Arteta to travel, obviously, for their cup tie later on in the year. But yeah, I think that they have been held. Obviously, they have been holding talks with the Gunners. Arteta, he is the assistant manager of Manchester City, but is he the right manager? I'm not too sure. I mean, Arteta is not proven. He's obviously played for Arsenal before, but he's not proven as a manager. And obviously, you look at Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Obviously, he's been proven as a manager, but that was in Norway, so does that really count? And of course, he got Wilfred Zaha relegated in 2014 with Cardiff. So again, does that really count? But yeah, I really do think employing Arteta, of course, he knows the club, but again, it's the same situation as Solskjaer, and he hasn't really been, getting Manchester United to where they should have been, or where the fans thought he was going to take them, because they're outside the Champions League places, and so at Arsenal, they're in a spot of bother. Arsenal, they're in mid-table in 10th, 4 points behind North London rival Spurs, so it really is troubling times for Arsenal. But obviously Allegri and Ancelotti, now he's been sacked as Napoli coach in very bizarre circumstances after leading them to the Champions League last 16, where Napoli will actually they'll play Barcelona in the last 16. That's going to be quite interesting to see without Carlo Ancelotti. But of course, Napoli have now appointed Gennaro Gattuso, the former AC Milan manager, as their new manager. But going back to Arsenal, I think Ancelotti would be... I think he's been on their card now for Arsenal. Arsenal fans have wanted Ancelotti or Simeone or Allegri for quite some time now. I think especially when this whole Emery out thing started at the start of the season, I think that's really one of them key men that they wanted. Will Ancelotti go to Arsenal? Well, no, because Ancelotti has actually had, been linked a lot with the Everton job, and from Napoli to Everton, my goodness me, that is quite a downfall considering the job that Duncan Ferguson has done. We'll touch on Everton in a little bit, but for Arsenal, I think they should, try and stick with Ancelotti, try and see if he can become the next manager. Give Freddie Ljungberg a chance, I think. Maybe give him until January. I mean, we'll obviously talk about who they are, but Arsenal are actually playing... let me just have a look. Who are they playing, Arsenal? I don't exactly know who Arsenal are playing. They're actually playing Olympiacos, the Greek team, who actually once beat Manchester United in the Champions League in the 2013-14. So that could be a pretty tricky trip, but I think Arsenal will deal with it. But I think give him until that tie against the Greek champions, and then I think people will realise, is he good enough for the job? Is he really taking Arsenal forward? Because really, it's just Aubameyang and Lacazette that carry the team in terms of goals. I mean, Aubameyang's got over 50 goals for the club, and Lacazette's also approaching that number as well. But yeah, I think Simeone, Allegri and Ancelotti are the three managers that Arsenal have to go for. They cannot go for any other manager. I think Eddie Howe, despite being linked with Arsenal for quite some time, I don't think Eddie Howe will go to Arsenal, considering the fact that Bournemouth have just won against Chelsea, and considering also the fact that I believe Bournemouth are only a win 3 points behind them. So I don't think he will leave Arsenal. I'm just trying to think. Nuno Espirito Santo, that looks like a little bit of a sailed ship. I mean, it could happen, but it does look like a bit of a sailed ship now that Wolves are above Arsenal. So I don't think that will happen. So really, those are the three managers that they'll have to go for. But yeah, they're playing Olympiacos in the Champions League. Liverpool beat Watford by 2-0. Undeserved on Watford, really. They had a lot of chances. Decore had a chance, but really the main highlight of the game was with Mo Salah scoring an audacious and embarrassing little back heel against Watford. Basically, I think it was Firmino who had a shot. I think someone had a shot. It was blocked. It came out to Salah, who was onside about a couple of yards out, and back heeled it, I believe, straight through a defender's legs into the net. It was quite humiliating for Watford. But you have to say, Nigel Pearson has, as strange as it sounds, improved Watford. They definitely had more confidence. De La Feu was running, so was Decore. And I think Deeney has recovered fully now. So maybe Watford could start, to maybe climb up the table, because they're bottom of the table, 6 points from safety, so not really climb in the sense that I put it in. But they've definitely turned a corner under Watford. And remember, January, February was around that time where obviously he staged the Great Escape with Leicester. So if he can get some results in the Christmas festive period, that would really, really be a bonus because they're 31 points behind that 40-point mark that everyone says is the amount of points you need to get to survive in the Premier League. So I think in the last couple of games, they do need, I would say, around 9-10 victories. In the second half of the season, they definitely need 10 victories, I think. It will be very difficult considering how they've played. But they've got the players. Deulofeu, Deeney, Pereira, Doucouré, of course, a couple of seasons ago was linked with a few big clubs like Tottenham and Chelsea. But no, he hasn't really shown up this season. But Watford are turning the corner. Liverpool are now 10 points ahead of Leicester. I did say the title challenge is over for Manchester City, and it looks like it's over for Leicester as well, because they drew 1-1 to Norwich. And credit to Norwich, they did play, and Teemu Pukki scored his 9th goal of the season despite playing most of it with a broken toe. So he's got some resilience, the lad. But Leicester will really see that as an opportunity missed, because, of course, they were now starting to become in the conversation. Of course, Brendan Rodgers has said they're not really interested in the title race, but I really do believe that Leicester were starting to think about the title, but I think it's gone now. I don't think they'll do it. They still have the best goal difference in the league, but they won't do it now. I think they'll solely focus on finishing in the top 6. I think they are, they're 14 points ahead of Manchester United in 6th. So I think, bar Leicester, really hitting rock bottom and really losing a lot, I don't think they'll slip up, and I think they will finish top 6, which will make an absolute mockery of my pre-season predictions where I predicted Leicester to finish in 7th. So, yeah, if they can finish in the Champions League, it would be, I would say, obviously to Leicester fans, it'll probably be a bit meh, considering they have a better squad than they had when they won the league, and of course they haven't won the league. But it'll still be a good achievement for Leicester. It'll be a good achievement for Brendan Rodgers, and it will set them up for the future. But good point for Norwich. They're 3 points from safety from Aston Villa. Aston Villa lost against Sheffield United, and John Fleck really is becoming one of the most underrated players in the Premier League. He's really good. Key to Sheffield United's promotion success in the Championship. Played a lot of games in the Championship last season, and he has scored both goals. Jack Grealish missing a penalty at Bramall Lane to compel the misery for Aston Villa. I think they're going to go down. They're the 4th team in the Premier League that have hit double figures in terms of defeats. And it's not looking good for Aston Villa. They've only scored 1 goal in their past 2 games. Not very good. Wesley hasn't scored for a while. Jack Grealish hasn't scored since the draw at Old Trafford. So it's not really going draw Old Trafford. He has scored against Leicester, I've just remembered, I believe. But he hasn't really, hit form for the last few games. And there's this talk about the England squad and will Jack Grealish made it? I touched on it a few weeks ago. Jack Grealish will not make the England squad. They have a stacked midfield, 100%. Sheffield United, though, bloody hell, 7th place. And only 1 point behind Spurs and 4 behind Chelsea. They are the surprise of the season. And, really good. But another surprise of the season so far, you have to say, in some ways, could be Crystal Palace, because they got a 1-1 draw against Brighton. Brighton themselves are only a win away from Crystal Palace. But Crystal Palace are doing pretty good. Wilfred Zaha scoring the goal. Also, Newcastle United, despite losing, are also up in the Newcastle United, despite losing, are still in the hunt for the top 10. Burnley beat Newcastle 1-0 after a header from Chris Wood. Brilliant delivery, and Burnley will rely on set pieces this season to keep them up. They don't really need a lot now, Burnley, to stay up, which will make an absolute mockery again of my pre-season predictions, where I predicted them to finish in the bottom 3. So I'm really good at predicting the Premier League. But Crystal Palace, Newcastle, Burnley, they are doing pretty well for themselves, I think. They're in around where Arsenal are. West Ham took lots of pressure off of their manager because they won against Southampton 1-0. Sebastian Haller has finally scored. That's his 5th goal of the season. And Mikel Antonio looked a real presence as well, having a chance in the game. But West Ham, of course, distanced themselves from the relegation zone. They're 15th now. They are 4 points ahead of Southampton, who stay in the bottom 3, level on points with Aston Villa, but obviously due to their worse goal difference. The pressure is starting to come on Southampton, but I think Hasenhuttl will stay. Pellegrini definitely will stay. But speaking of teams around in the bottom 3, Everton, they salvaged the draw with Manchester United, and Duncan Ferguson's done pretty well. as Everton manager. Got a little bit lucky though. Victor Lindelof own goal put Everton ahead. But the real talking point in that game was the substitution of Moise Kean, who went off 19 minutes after he came on. Now, whether he was brought off for Oumar Niasse, who, in my opinion, that's a downgrade. But was it the right decision? I'm not too sure. I mean, Moise Kean so far, I'm not saying this season. So far this season has been a flop. I mean, has he even scored in the Premier League this season? I don't even know. But he hasn't really performed well. And again, this is Everton spending money on players that haven't performed. I can name you countless players that haven't performed for Everton in the last few seasons that they spent money on. Obviously, Moise Kean, Cenk Tosun, who was a big money signing from Besiktas. He hasn't really performed up to expectations. Gylfi Sigurdsson, I would say, hasn't really performed up to expectations because he was the man who was supposed to bring Everton that European football. He hasn't really done that. Wayne Rooney's return, not really very good. Davy Klaassen as well, number 10. Also, you could say Ashley Williams didn't really do well. Neither did Stecklenburg. He hasn't really done well. I don't think, played a game so far this season. Bernard has done pretty well, but I think for a free transfer, I think he's been pretty decent, in fact. Gabaman hasn't really done very well in the centre of the park. Theo Walcott, Alex Iwobi haven't really lived up to the expectations, considering they both came from better clubs. But I think they'll take the draw. But I don't know, Moise Kean, he's a good player, very good. We saw him in Juventus, one of the best young prodigies there are in the world while he was at Juventus. But I don't know, has his time been more now? They're looking to sell him to Bologna, is the rumours. But I don't know, for me, I think that they should stick with Moise Kean. I think they're being too harsh with him. Manchester United stay out of the top 6 stay out of the Champions League places by 4 points. Everton are now 3 points ahead of the relegation zone. So, pretty good result. And should Dan Ferguson be given the job full time? I don't really know. He's going to be in charge for the next couple of games. That's all we know. But they're still looking for a manager. Ancelotti won't be a manager unless Everton's owner, Farhad Mashiri, pays him a lot of money a year. I don't think Ancelotti will be at Everton. I think Everton are way too small of a club for Ancelotti. And I'm not disrespecting Everton. Everton are one of the biggest clubs in the country. But, I mean, Carlo Ancelotti has won the Champions League, I believe, twice, with AC Milan and also with Real Madrid. So it'll be a downgrade, really, if he were to go to Everton, because they've got a 2-time Champions League winner at Everton. A little bit familiar to the Newcastle situation with Rafa Benitez a couple of years ago. He won the Champions League and Europa League, and he was at Newcastle. So, I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on who you think could be the next Everton manager. David Moyes still being linked with the job. He won't go, definitely. No. But, I think that is it for the Premier League. To round off the Champions League, it is going to be Borussia Dortmund playing against Paris Saint-Germain. That is going to be a really tasty tie. Atalanta in Manchester City's group, one of the surprise teams in the last 16, playing against Valencia, of course, who were in Chelsea's group. Atletico Madrid playing against Liverpool. I think Liverpool will go through. Lyon playing Juventus. And, of course, Napoli against Barcelona, as I said. The English clubs in the Europa League that are contesting in the draw, we have Wolves playing Espanyol. Now, Espanyol are in the La Liga. They're in the top half of La Liga. And I don't really know much about them, to be fair, guys, so I don't know. Ajax are playing one of the La Liga's real surprise, pretty much Spain's answer to Sheffield United, Getafe, who are in the top 4, which is unbelievable. Bayer Leverkusen against Porto, that'll be a pretty tasty tie for Europe. Celtic face Copenhagen. Now, this is Celtic's competition. I mean, they beat Lazio home and away. They've done pretty well in their group. They lost to that Romanian side, Cluj, which is kind of embarrassing, but obviously won't be taken into account as they've already been through. Arsenal, as I said, will be facing Olympiacos. Manchester United are playing Club Bruges, who are a Belgian team, who have Simon Mignolet in goal, which is pretty interesting. So let's see how that one turns out. Eintracht Frankfurt and Red Bull Salzburg, of course. Salzburg is where Erling Braut Haaland plays his football, one of the best youngsters in the world this season so far. And Rangers, who I think have really surprised me. I didn't think they would qualify from the group because, it was a tough group. But they played Braga, who were in, I believe, no, they weren't in. Braga are a Portuguese team who have got Ricardo Horta, who's pretty good for them. He's looking to maybe go to a top European club. I think Ajax have expressed their interest in him, but obviously we'll see. But yeah, that is it for Europe and for the Premier League. It's now time to turn over to the EFL. And the EFL, a lot of games happening this weekend. And really, the thing is, if we look at the Championship table, you can see that there is a big gap between Leeds United in second and Preston North End in third. It is a straight battle between West Brom and Leeds for the title. They both had entertaining games. Charlie Austin, former QPR striker, he scored twice for West Brom to help them to a 3-2 victory over Birmingham City. Leeds United were 3-0 up against Cardiff, but obviously they were pegged back to 3-0. Incredible comeback from Cardiff. Preston North End, one of the surprises of the season, they beat Luton Town by 2-1. Sheffield Wednesday beating Nottingham Forest by 4-1. They're almost in the hunt for the playoffs. Swansea City as well, looking to ensure their hunt in the playoffs as well. They're only 1 point behind. It's so tight. I mean, Preston North End in third. 4 points separate Preston North End and Millwall, who are in 11th place. That is a joke. That is incredibly tight. Leeds' run of 4 consecutive wins, of course, came to an end. Blackburn Rovers, they're on a 5-match unbeaten run, and that is because Blackburn, I believe, they won this weekend. So, yeah, that was a pretty good result for Blackburn Rovers, beating Bristol City by 2-0. And, of course, Barnsley beating Queen's Park Rangers in an 8-goal thriller, 5-3. But, the Championship table is looking pretty solid at the moment. Stoke City, Wigan and Barnsley are still in the bottom 3, with Luton, Middlesbrough and Huddersfield still having a chance of getting relegated. But it looks like it's West Brom and Leeds that are going up. West Brom, I said, would go up. I thought that they would come second. I thought Fulham would win the title, but Fulham are in the playoffs, but on a 3 consecutive defeats. Fulham, they're on. But in League One, Wickham are doing absolute bits in League One. They lead Ipswich Town by 7 points. They've won the most games in League One. Pretty solid team, you would have to say, and they beat Burton Albion by 2-0 in this one. It does not get better for Southend's boss Sol Campbell. They drew against Rotherham. Ipswich, they lost against Bristol Rovers, and Lincoln City got their first win in 6 against Tranmere Rovers. Colchester United, as we go into League 2, Colchester United are playing Manchester United in the replay in the Carabao Cup, and Colchester United actually drew 2-2 with Scunthorpe. Macclesfield Town, despite being, very short of first-team players, managed to get a draw against Walsall. Leyton Orient and Bradford City played out a 0-0 draw. Northampton Town looked to charge to the playoffs. They beat Forest Green Rovers by 1-0. And Cheltenham and Cambridge were held as well. So the table is looking like this. Swindon Town are on a 5-match consecutive winning run, which is pretty good. The other team with an unbeaten run, the other 2 teams with an unbeaten run in League 2 are Cheltenham Town, who were actually promoted from the National League a couple of seasons ago, and Colchester United, who of course faced Manchester United in the Carabao Cup. It's quite tight in the League 2 playoffs as well. Cheltenham Town in 3rd to Colchester in 9th. 4 points. That's pretty tight for the League 2 playoffs. But of course, Morecambe and Stevenage really are the 2 teams that are in trouble, even though Stevenage are on a 5-match unbeaten run. 4 of those have been draws. But of course, there's only 1 relegation spot in League 2 because of the liquidation of Bury. But that is it. Then that rounds up this episode of the Chris Talks Football Podcast. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. Obviously, if you follow, if you've looked on the last few episodes, you have said that I'm going to make an announcement and the announcement will be that next week's episode will be done on Saturday. So I'm not going to do all of the Premier League games. I'm only going to do only 7 of them, because there are only 7 Premier League games, and that is because on Sunday the 22nd I'm going to be leaving to go on holiday, and so as a result I'm not going to be doing a podcast probably until the new year. So next week will probably be my final podcast of 2019. So yeah, hopefully you guys did enjoy. Smash the like button, of course, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and as always, I will talk to you guys in a while.